First of all, thank you very much to the Jesus family for hosting us and this chance to think about a fascinating subject in Jewish thought and living, I guess. And that's the question of beauty, and particularly woman's beauty. Right? How do we see that? How do we approach it? What's an authentic Torah approach to the question of beauty, feminine beauty, and the use of feminine beauty? Is that okay? Can we talk about it?
Yes.
The problem is this, that if you look in Torah sources, you'll see that the Torah makes a lot of women's beauty. Right? It talks about its great women being beautiful, and in no uncertain terms. For example, can you think of any examples? Sarah? Anyone else? Esther is a strange example to give, because the Talmud has two opinions about Esther. All the other women are mentioned in Tanakh are very often described as being exceptionally beautiful. When it comes to Esther, there's a bit of a problem, because the Talmud says that it had two opinions about Esther's beauty. One is that she was one of the foremost beautiful women who ever lived. On the other hand, the Talmud says she was problematic looking. There's an argument in the Talmud. One opinion there is that she was exceptionally beautiful, one of the foremost beautiful women who ever lived. The other opinion is that she had a greenish face. Right? She had a green face. According to that opinion, the reason the king was attracted to her, Achashverosh was attracted to her, because she had what's called a chut shel chesed, some sort of a grace or a charm that he saw that attracted him in a very powerful way, but not because she was conventionally beautiful. And that is a serious question. If the Torah presents its great women as very beautiful, and obviously sees the need to say that they were beautiful, obviously it's an important aspect of what they were and what they had to do in the world. When it comes to Esther, who's the one woman in Jewish history who really needed beauty, because her job was to lure a non-Jewish king into a relationship so that she could save the Jewish people. In that case, according to one opinion, she was not beautiful, and the question that arises is, why did God not make her beautiful? If he made Sarah beautiful, which only caused trouble, right? The Egyptians were ready to kill her husband because she was very beautiful. When it comes to Esther, who really needs her beauty to save the Jewish people, there God gives her a green face. I mean, do you see the problem? Why? Okay. But apart from Esther, when you study other women, we'll try to understand Esther's beauty as well. Right? We're coming up to Purim soon. No, not so long. Let's talk about this, and that is that when you meet the women of greatness in the Torah presents their beauty. Right? For example, the Torah says that Sarah was very beautiful, so much so that the Egyptians were ready to kill for her. She must have been exquisitely beautiful. Our sources are very clear that Rivka was very beautiful. Right? How do we know that she was beautiful? How do we know that Rivka was also beautiful, not only Sarah? She was also abducted by the king when they were traveling through, right? So that she was taken away from Yitzhak because of her extreme beauty. Rachel was beautiful. Leah, the Torah doesn't mention her beauty only because there's something about her eyes, perhaps because she cried a lot, because she thought she was going to have to marry Esau. So, the Torah doesn't actually say that she was beautiful. And many other women. For example, the Ramban says that Dinah was exquisitely beautiful. The only reason the Torah doesn't mention Dinah's beauty is because it led to a problem. Because Shem saw her, and because of her beauty, he abducted her and molested her, so it caused the tragedy. And in fact, the Ramban says that's actually the premonition of Purim, of the Hanukkah story, where the Greeks would take Jewish women and they'd be avenged by a small group, just like Dinah was avenged by only two of her brothers. That's a long discussion in the Ramban, but he makes it clear that Dinah was exceptionally beautiful. There's a special reason the Torah doesn't mention it. And many other women. The Gemara says, for example, the Tanakh says Abigail, who married David, was so beautiful that when she walked and her skirt lifted slightly, the light of her leg, her beauty, was so great that David traveled many miles on the light of the beauty of her body, right, and whatever that means. So that you see that very great beauty is an intrinsic part of great Jewish women. And I think that's a real problem. I think that should give us a reason to think very deeply. Why is it important? Why is a person's beauty, why is a woman's beauty important? I mean, the point about Torah is that it's spiritual teaching. It's teaching you how to be in the world. The least important thing about you is your physical appearance. We want people to understand the depth, the inner being. We're talking about a spiritual document here. We're not talking about Vogue magazine or I don't know what magazine. What? You don't even know. Good, actually. Good. We're talking here about Torah, which is teaching spiritual values, and it's talking about how to develop the inner being. And here the Torah makes it very plain that great women are very beautiful. Why is that relevant? I would think not only is it not relevant, it's a problem. Do you bring up your daughters and teach them that the most important thing about themselves is their beauty and how they look in the world? You don't do that. You teach them that what's important is the inner being, surely. So the mystery is, why does the Torah tell us about the great beauty of its women when that is a spiritual problem? Do you hear that problem? Anyone? Someone? Any suggestions? You know, whenever I give this talk, let's say in the Beauty and Torah, that's what they say. Some girl always says, we're not talking about physical, we're talking about spiritual beauty. That's clearly wrong. Can you see why? They say Sarah was spiritually beautiful. The Torah is not interested in physical beauty. The Egyptians were interested in it. The Egyptians were not looking for evidence in material. That may be true as well. But the Egyptians were into the most depraved sensual beauty. They were not looking for spiritual beauty. They were ready to kill because she was physically beautiful. Egypt was the most depraved and immoral country. The Torah calls it Ervas Haaretz, which means the nakedness of the world. You're talking about tremendously immoral culture. There's no question they were ready to kill. They didn't kill somebody because they're interested in the spiritual quality. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's no question they were extremely beautiful physically. Yeah.
Was it maybe an extra challenge for them? I mean, these are great women, so they're being challenged constantly. So beauty would be an extra challenge versus the other direction.
So you mean it's something God gave them to suppress and overcome?
To overcome because it's perceived incorrectly.
Maybe. That's the opposite of what you said. Right? The one view is that if they were beautiful, it reflected an inner beauty. You saying that it's a challenge because it needs to be suppressed and overcome.
Maybe Hashem gave it to us a tool so they would attract people to them so they could.
But it's a wrong attraction. It's a wrong attraction. It's a wrong attraction. You're attracting these non-Jewish, lecherous individuals who are ready to kill for you.
But I think people are willing to kill for internal beauty.
Are you serious? Egyptians? I don't think that's the correct understanding. I don't think so.
It's a personality, it's not so much.
They were interested in the most depraved and sensual and immoral conduct, no question about that. They weren't looking for a woman who could teach them, teach them how to be spiritual, no question about that. So, if you said to me that Avraham Avinu was attracted to her because her beauty showed him that there was inner content, but you can't even say that. The Medrash says he never looked at her.
No, I'm just saying, I don't think you can separate physical beauty and
I'm not saying they were beautiful spiritually. I'm talking about there was a beautiful exterior. And the question is, why does the Torah emphasize? Who needs to know about that? No doubt they were beautiful exterior. And that's true. Why was Esther not beautiful? If a beautiful interior is reflected in external beauty, why wasn't Esther given an external beauty? So that's a problem. That's one problem. But I think a more serious problem is that when the Torah itself talks about beauty, it says that it's a bad thing. The Torah tells you that this type of feminine beauty and external beauty is a very big problem and it's a bad thing. Where, for example? Where does Joseph say that it's bad? No, that's the fact that he made much of his looks which stimulated temptation. By the way, that's also a problem. Why does the Torah describe Joseph as beautiful? If it's a problem that it describes women as beautiful, why does it describe? He's the only man in the Torah described as beautiful with woman's beauty. The same terms that are used to describe a woman's beauty, Joseph is given that description. Why is it important for us to know that he was beautiful? Why was he beautiful? Why is it important for a man? But the more important than this is the Torah tells us, and the Torah Sheba'al, the oral law tells us that physical beauty is a very serious problem. And not desirable. For example, Sheker HaChaim, that Chaim, beauty and charm, is lies and falsehood. Well, now you have a real problem, right? Sheker HaChaim. In the Orthodox world, when a shidduch is about to take place, and they want to tell the young man about the young lady, right? So they want to tell him that she's good looking. It's not nice to say that. So they say she's got lots of sheker in heaven. That's what they say. She's got lots of vanity and fault, meaning that's the way you say it, right? Okay. So You see that charm and beauty is lies and vanity and emptiness. Well, now one moment. If the Torah tells you that, right? In the Chazal say like this, Al tistakel b'kankan, don't look at the vessel, look at what's in it. In English you say don't judge a book by its cover. Right? Don't look at the can, look at the content. Forget the presentation, the external, that's not good. And the Torah in many places tells us that external beauty is a lure and it's a deception and it's not good. So we have a real problem. Let me give you a classic example. Here's where the Gemara teaches this principle. The Gemara says that there was a man called Yeshua ben Hananiah. Yeshua ben Hananiah was the great rabbinic sage of his era, probably greater than the others. He used to debate the Greeks. You know, the Greek sages, this was already in the Roman era, but the Romans kept an academy of Greek philosophers, and he was required to debate them about philosophical subjects. Very, very amazing debates that he used to engage. But one of the features of this man, Yeshua ben Hananiah, by the way, this is also a very interesting thing because the Greeks taught beauty. The debate between us and the Greeks, one of the central elements of that debate is the question of beauty. Because Greece was a culture of aesthetics, right? The Greek games were played naked, the body was displayed and demonstrated because they believed in a healthy mind and a healthy body, and the Olympic Games. And Greece was a culture of aesthetics. All of modern Western aesthetics today, as well as many other Western societal structures, are based on Greek patterns and Greek thought. So it's not insignificant that he debated the Greeks. The Greeks who taught great beauty and presented beauty in the world. The Yeshua ben Hananiah was extremely ugly. He was extremely ugly. He was so ugly that when he met the Caesar's daughter, the first thing she said to him was, "How could such beautiful wisdom be contained in such an ugly vessel?" In other words, he was so ugly, apparently she wasn't even ashamed to discuss it openly. Ironically, his body was formed by the sounds of Torah. The Mishnah says that when he was a baby, his mother pushed his baby carriage into the yeshiva so that his ears would be formed by the sound of Torah. And he became the great sage of his age, but he was ugly. And she said to him, how could such beautiful wisdom be contained in such an ugly vessel? Before I tell you what he answered to her, let's understand the question. There's no accident that this question comes from a woman, a Greek woman, a woman who represents Greek culture, right? Meaning this, that our understanding is that women are the ones who understand beauty, right? Beauty is inherent in the womanly, and women understand the spiritual quality called bina, right? Women have what's called bina yisera, right? So in English they translate it as intuition. That's not really what it means. Bina really means a certain way of understanding things, and in practice it means being able to dispose of things correctly, to arrange things in an aesthetic and beautiful way. Women generally have a talent of being able to make things look nice, right? Men can make things very, very organized, but not beautiful. I can tell you, I spent 2 years in a military situation. You go to a military camp, you go to an army camp, things couldn't be neater. There's not a speck of dust. Everything is exactly in line. But it's just terrible. Death. Spend a few hours there, you feel like, you want to shoot yourself. You let a woman loose there, things start to look nice, right? Women have the sense of being able to dispose things, organize things, and make them look nice. So she's a woman who represents the understanding of beauty, and she represents Greek culture, which is exactly the understanding of a harmony between an inner beauty and an external beauty, like you said should be the case. And therefore, she could not understand how somebody of such great wisdom, such beautiful wisdom, could be housed in a vessel of such ugliness. That does not make sense to her. That's not the Greek idea. The Greek idea is that this athlete has to have a powerful philosophical mind and a very beautiful body, and you strip it and display it. That's her concept. So she said to him, how could such ugly vessel contain such beautiful wisdom? So he said to her, what does your father keep his wine in? So she said, like everyone, he keeps his wine in clay vessels. They used to keep their wine in earthenware, glazed earthenware vessels. He said to her, but surely that's not fit for a king. Surely a Caesar, like your father, his wine should be in gold and silver. So she thought that was a good idea. She went back to the palace, and in her father's wine cellar, she had all the wine put into gold and silver vessels. Now when you put alcohol into metal, it goes off. The alcohol interacts with the metal, and all the wine was ruined. So when they next served the wine at Caesar's table, the wine was all spoiled. And he said, what's going on? So she said, the Jew told me to do this. So Caesar called him Yeshua ben Hananiah, and he said, Rabbi, what's going on? So he said, I showed your daughter. Your daughter asked me how such beautiful content, could be contained in an ugly vessel. I showed her when the vessel presents its own importance, it ruins the content. That a vessel, to be a loyal vessel, must only contain. As soon as it asserts itself and tries to show you what it is, then it's in conflict with the content, and the content gets ruined. In other words, what he was saying to her was, the reason I achieved wisdom is because my body's broken, and there was no conflict. You know, what he's saying is that people who are very good looking very often do not have to develop depth. Because if you're good looking, you can get away with your looks, and that's your attractiveness, and that's your appeal to people, and you don't have to have any intelligence, right? That's in fact, it's a general rule in life that the better looking somebody is, the more you should distrust the content. Because very often somebody, a very good speaker, for example, somebody who's a brilliant orator, doesn't need as much content. He can sway people talking about anything just because the presentation's exquisite, right? You should distrust it. Some of the sources say the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu could not speak eloquently was so that nobody could ever accuse us of having been moved by a great speaker who moved people by his power of origin. The greatest Jewish leader of all time couldn't speak. And so that there was only content, and it wasn't the slick presentation that appealed. And therefore, that is what he was teaching. He showed her that when the external, if you want to bring it down to the really practical, you as women will know this. If a woman is exceptionally good looking, no one takes her mind seriously in the culture we live in. Imagine some incredible movie star, right, who's unbelievably beautiful, and they interview her, and she says something philosophical. People would laugh. No one take that seriously. They don't even relate to her mind. It's not necessary. You know? She's just a body. And therefore, this is the tension that he was. By the way, little girls, a little girl who's very, very pretty. It's a big disadvantage. Because what happens in secular society, she gets praised for her looks and her beauty all the time, which is ridiculous because it's not something she worked on. And she starts asserting herself only because she looks good, and she doesn't have to develop the content. It's not healthy. It's not a good. To be too good looking can be a big disadvantage. Anyway, that was what he said to her. He said to her, I've achieved wisdom because my body never interfered. There was never any appeal. There was never any. I never identified myself with my body, and therefore I became great. She did not accept that answer. The Torah doesn't deal with fools and idiots. She was a deep thinking woman, and she said to him, I don't accept that. I know rabbis who are very, very good looking and very wise. I don't accept your principle. You know, Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, for example, the great sage of his day, was so exquisitely good looking that when the Romans killed him, the daughter of the executioner or the Roman emperor asked her father to keep him alive for her, and he refused, so they skinned his face. And the Romans kept the mask of his face, right? And the Gemara talks about it in detail. He was exceptionally good looking. Rabbi Yochanan was so good looking that when he went to visit a friend of his who was ill in a dark house, Rabbi Yochanan rolled up his sleeve and lit the house. The incandescence of his beauty lit the house. So she said, look, Rabbi, you're telling me that you need to be ugly to be great. I know rabbis who are very good looking and very wise. So he said to her, yes, but had they been ugly, they would have been wiser. In other words, they managed to achieve great spiritual qualities despite good looks. For me, it was easier. Okay, what do you see from this piece of Talmud? You see that external good looks are not desirable. They're a problem. They're negative. They're a temptation, and they decrease the content. The external is at war with the internal. Do you see this? So now we have a real problem. We have on the one hand the Torah extolling the beauty of its women, and Sarah was unbelievably beautiful, and all this credible beauty of Joseph and its great women, and it's obviously essential. The Torah doesn't have one single word that isn't absolutely of essence. That means these great women, these great characters, their beauty was essential to them, and the same Torah tells you that beauty is vanity and lies and deception, and it's not good, and it will destroy the country. What's going on? Do we see the challenge, ladies? Anyone? Someone?
A lot of people will be out of business.
I don't think so. Let's try to think this through. I think the way to resolve this conflict, this problem, this paradox maybe, is as follows. And this, of course, is a central message. We call it tznius. We call this tzniut. Right? This is what we mean by modesty. Is the correct use of this area. Let's try to delve into this, a bit of depth in this area. Let's go back to the beginning, right? Let's call this the creation, right? And we're moving through 6,000 years of human history. This is where we are, by the way. Because we're 5773. We are very close to the end of world history as we know it, right? Let's take the spectrum of 6,000 years. Let's go back to the beginning as we always should. And there you see that when man and woman were created originally, their beauty was indescribable. Their physical beauty was so extreme and so luminous that the way the Torah presents it is that they wore no clothing. They wore no clothing and they needed no clothes, right? And there was no shame. Let's understand what that means. Do you know that the whole problem with man and woman was nakedness and was lack of shame and shame? That's the whole problem. Adam and Eve, Adam sins and he hides under the trees. And Hashem arrives in the garden and says, where are you? So he schleps himself out from under the bushes and Hashem says, what's the problem? What have you done? And he said, I hid because I was naked. That's the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is you disobeyed my command. I told you not to eat the fruit of the tree. You did evil. You ate the fruit of the tree. That's the problem. Man doesn't say that. He doesn't say I ate the fruit of the tree. He said, I'm naked and ashamed. What's that got to do with anything? The answer is it's got everything to do with everything. Here's the issue. When man and woman were created originally, they were naked. That means that the body, what does it mean to be naked and what does it mean to need clothing? The concept is this, that the way they were formed, their body was so transparent, was so luminous, that when you looked at the body, you saw the soul. When you looked at the body, the external body, you saw the neshama, right? The Torah puts it like this, that when man and woman were created, they were clothed in cosmos or garments of light, tunics of light. That's the way the Gemara puts it. What does it mean to be clothed in a garment of light? Light means something that reveals, shows you things. When you looked at the body, you saw the neshama. Rabbi Akiva puts it like this. If you want to know how, first of all, you know Adam and Eve were the size of the universe before the sin. They occupied the whole universe. The reason there are so many stars and planets is because man and woman occupied them. Only the sin caused us to be shrunk ever smaller until we occupy the very small space that we occupy now. But their bodies, the Gemara says that after Adam sinned and died, the light that shone from his heels was greater than the sun. Can we imagine what they looked like beforehand? Right? They were absolutely blindingly brilliant with light. The Rabbi Akiva puts it like this: if you want to know what Adam looked like before the sin, he looked the opposite of the way we look now. When you look at a human being now, all you see is the body. Look at a person, you see only the body. You see an animal material body. Can you see a spirituality? On the face, perhaps, you can see a faint glow of a soul. That's called zitapon, the glow of the face. If you ever have to watch, unfortunately, somebody dying, you see that a few seconds before death and a few seconds after death, something changes, some light is extinguished. But it's very hard to see. It's very, very faint. By the way, that's why the face needs no clothing. There's no shame in the face. That's why there's no sneeze problem with the face. The face does not need garments because the face is the one last place in the human body that the outside still shows you a little of the inside. That's why in Hebrew the word panim, which means a face, is exactly the same word as pnim, which means the inside. And of course the eyes are the real key. That's why the eye in Hebrew, ayin means an eye, and ayin means a spring of water that becomes revealed from the depths. Not the same word exactly. So that is why the body was exactly the opposite of the way it is now. When you looked at a human being then, the body was almost invisible. When you look at a person now, all you see is the body. If you want to see the soul, there's a faint glow that you have to look very hard for. When man was created originally, when you looked at him, all you saw was the soul, and you looked very carefully, you could see the outlines of the body. Imagine looking at a very, very powerful electric globe, right? You see only the light. If you look very carefully, you can sort of see the glass. That's how man was, exactly the opposite of the way people are now. Such a body does not need to be covered. A body that serves the purpose of showing you the soul, there's no point in covering a body like that. Why would you do that? Why are we ashamed when we're naked? Why are we ashamed to be naked? The reason is because when you look at your naked body, you're aware that it's animal. Your body is an animal being. There's no difference between your body and an animal's, a gorillas, and orangutans. I mean, with all due respect, ladies, you know, some of us are better looking orangutans and some less, but your body is an animal body. The evolutionists are right. So you stand in front of the mirror, you look at your naked body, you're aware that you have an angelic soul. You have an angelic inner being, and it's housed in an animal body. That's the cause of shame. What's the solution? It's to hide the body. You know, when man sinned and he realized that he crashed himself into the physical, sensual universe, instead of using it as a vehicle for spirituality, he now allowed it to become dominant. His now body dominates, and his neshama is a distant exile in the body. What's the solution? He tried to cover his nakedness. So the Torah says he took fig leaves and tried to cover his nakedness. And Hashem said, I'm going to teach you a lesson for all of history. Whenever you have a problem, try to make the problem the solution. And Hashem sewed you beautiful, dignified garments. You thought that garments are there to hide your nakedness. I'm going to show you that garments are there to reveal your dignity. The purpose of garments, there's two purposes to a garment. One is to hide your nakedness, and the second is to reveal your dignity. When a king wears royal garments, they hide the king, but they show you that he's royal. This is why we are so hung up on clothing in Jews. Special clothes for Shabbat, special dignified clothing that emphasize the dignity of the body, not its provocative nature. Right? That is, and what are clothing? What is clothing? In Hebrew, the word for a garment is levush. Levush spells lo-bosh, not to be ashamed. There are two words for a garment in Hebrew. The other one is beged. Beged means treachery. A garment, beged, means to be a traitor. Why? You know, in Old English, the word for a traitor was a turncoat. Because the beged, you look at the beged, well, are you seeing what really is? Right? By the way, according to Kabbalah, you know how it goes? The first letter of the alphabet is Aleph. Aleph is always the letter of the soul. That's why it's silent, it means one. Aleph always means elevation and spirituality. It's the letter of the soul. What are the next three letters in Hebrew? Bet, Gimel, Dal, Beged. First you have the letter of the soul. The next three letters that are created form the garment that surrounds the soul and give it a place to manifest in the world, right? That's what it is. And therefore the solution, the problem was that originally the soul was dominant, the body was subservient. You looked at the body and showed you the soul. No reason to cover a body like that. That was exquisite beauty. And then man crashed the body into ugliness. Man crashed the body into a sensual tool that obstructs. Now you look at the body, you can no longer see the inside. You see only the outside, and it's an obstruction. What's the solution? You cover the body now in a way that gives it its dignity, right? That's the original problem. You know, Desta puts it like this. The body which represents the Yetzer Hara, the lower sensual, animalistic, childish, right, earthy aspect of the human being, that has taken over. Originally, the soul was dominant and controlled the body and used it. Now the body is dominant and it uses the soul. Right? The Talmud puts it like this. It says, first the Yetzer Hara is like a passerby in the street. Then he's like a beggar at your door. Then he's like a guest in your home. And then if you're lucky, you remain a guest. You've been hijacked by the lower self. One great rabbi in Jerusalem put it like this. He said, what's the right way to rob a bank? You're walking with a motorcycle, helmet and a gun. That's not for Jewish. Boy, that's not good. The right way to rob a bank is to make an appointment with a manager. You walk into his office, you put a sock in his mouth, you tie him up, you lock him up in a closet, you sit at his desk, you rob a bank. That's the sensible way to rob a bank, right? That's what's being done to you by the Yetzer Hara. Your lower sensual thing, right? Maybe women have this problem less than men, to some extent, but the lower self is dominant, and when you say I, me, it's him speaking, right? Can't say it better than this. You know, when man was created originally, the first person, I, me, I. When man said I, he meant his soul, he meant his neshama. Where was the sensual animal urge? It was at a distance as a serpent addressing me in the second person. Would you like to sin? It was outside of him. His inner consciousness was only the desire to be close to Hashem. That was all. After the sin, the inner desire, the real I, becomes the animal and the sensual. And the conscience, the elevated, speaks from a distance. This is easy to prove. Imagine you're facing something delicious, especially when you're on diet, and you shouldn't be tasting it. Which voice speaks? First or second person? I'd like to taste that. It's always the first person. I'd like to taste that. And the conscience says, no, you shouldn't. It's very humiliating. It's very embarrassing. When the voice of temptation speaks, it's always I. And the tone of voice is usually, I'd like to taste that. And the conscience says, excuse me? No, you shouldn't. That's what's happened. We've been taken over, right? So when you say I and me, you're thinking of the sensual, you're thinking of that's what it is. And the conscience sort of speaks from a distance if you allow it to. So that was the problem. The problem was that originally, in the original format of man and woman, the body was exquisitely beautiful, and nothing could have been better. The body showed the neshama. The great people of Jewish history, when you go back to Sarah and the great women of Jewish history, they had some of the echo of that original beauty. The reason the Torah talks about their beauty then was because it was an outer manifestation of inner beauty. That's the way it should be. They had a little bit of that original ability to show nakedness in a certain sense, where the body could show the beauty of the neshama. And as history progresses, the problem becomes worse. When man crashes that balance into its opposite, then you need to start hiding the body. And that's the message of man and woman in the garden, where the body was originally a servant of the neshama and then became its master. And as history progresses, and what's incredibly important to understand, when you get to Esther, Esther's exactly at the transition between the revealed zone of history and the hidden zone. Until Esther, 2,300 years ago, we lived in what's called Gilui Poli, where Hashem revealed himself. Until this phase of history, there were miracles and prophecy. And in that stage of history, there was still a little ability, occasionally, to show aspects of the body and beauty, and have them being vehicles for spirituality. But when you get to Esther, when you get to Purim and then Hanukkah, the word Purim and Hanukkah, which is the Greeks, who teach external nakedness as desirable, then the world crashes into such a darkness that it becomes extremely important to suppress. When the Torah tells you that beauty is important and wonderful and all that stuff, we're going back to the beginning of history. When the Torah tells you that beauty is a problem, because it's likely to show you the external and suppress the internal, we're talking about the end of history. And that's why Esther, for the first time in history, is a woman who really needs beauty. And there are two opinions. One opinion is she has a relationship with the previous stage where the beauty shows the internal spiritual. And the second opinion is no, she had a greenish face. She already moves into that phase of history where the external is going to be a problem, and it can only be a certain charm that is an inner thing that can manifest, and the external can only do damage. Right? That is and this is what we mean by tznius. Tzniut does not mean, some ladies think that tznius means you need to make yourself look ugly. That's very, very religious. You can make yourself look like something the cat dragged in. That's not tznius, okay? That's just ugly. Tznius doesn't mean that you look ugly. Tznius means that you have such a refinement, there's a certain dignity in your dress and deportment and conduct. And that's a skill, it's a womanly skill to be able to do that, right? That's what about tznius. I'll give you an example. Let's go back to the great teacher of this. Sarah. So the Gemara says about her, the Torah says about her that she had many names. One of her names was Yiska. Why? Rashi brings, because Kakol Sochin B'Yofya. The word Sachar, her name, means to see through. Sochin means to see through. In Hebrew there are many words for see. Right? Mabit, Mistakel, Ro'eh, Tzur, Shur, many Hebrew words for see. Socher is a word that means to see through something. Can you think of another word that's spelled the same way that means to see through? Samach, Vav, Chaf, He, Sukkah. A sukkah is something you're supposed to see through. The reason you go into a sukkah is to see through the material substance of your home and your normal protection that makes you feel secure. You go out of that into a thing that has a transparent roof, so you should be able to see the stars through the sky. At least the rain should be able to come through. Soche means to see through. Why was a woman? Why was she called Yiska? Rashi says, Ki hakol sochin b'yofya. Everybody could see through her beauty. What does it mean to see through a woman's beauty? It means that when you looked at her, you saw Hashem. That's what transparency means. Again, she was exquisitely beautiful, and yet she carried it in such a way that when you looked at her, a woman has the ability to carry her beauty in such a way that you can look at her and think of the animal, or you can look at her and think of the spiritual. That's tznius. Tznius doesn't mean that you look ugly. Tznius means that you conduct yourself, deport yourself, walk in such a way, talk in such a way, dress in such a way, that a man who looks at you could look at you and think of the animal, and you present yourself in such a way that he looks at you and thinks of the angelic. That is tznius, right? Again, it doesn't mean that you wear a paper bag over your head and it's kind of a sack and and that's why tznius is, and it involves, I don't need to tell you, it isn't only the length of a skirt and the length of a sleeve, it's also how you walk, it's perfume. Some women, they wear so much perfume, they walk into a room, half the men fall over anesthetized, you need Hatzalah, it's like, that's not tznius either, right? We're talking about, that is what it is, and therefore, that's the message. Of course, if you're an Egyptian, there's no hope for you. If you're an Egyptian and you see a woman like Sarah, you're going to see the nakedness and the beauty on that level. There's no hope for you. But anybody who has the ability to respond to the spiritual, right, is going to see. And that's the message. That's the message. And therefore, this conflict in Torah is that the original situation was a nakedness, and the body was beautiful. Of course, Hashem created a beautiful vessel for a beautiful content. Right? There's an ongoing debate in art. There's a beautiful painting. Does it need a simple frame? so that the painting shines out itself, but doesn't need a beautiful, elaborate frame to do justice to the beauty of the painting? It's an interesting question, right? There are about two sides to that issue. The answer is a question of taste. It's a question of taste. What exactly does this need? And it's a question of judgment. And therefore, we're not prudish and not enjoying or understanding or relating to physical beauty. But the question is, can it be used in its right time and place? Can it be used in such a way that the very tool of temptation, that thing that could bring down, can be used to show a refinement, right? And that's a skill that only a woman can have. It's only if you have the kind of beauty that could be used, right, in a negative fashion, can it be controlled and presented with a dignity that elevates, right? That's the concept. We live in a world where this is a very badly understood. We live in a world where women present themselves in extremely provocative fashion. I think the reason women do that in the modern age is that they don't understand. They give men too much credit. They think that a man can look at that beauty and still see the inner being. They don't understand. But the reason I think is because women have a talent for looking at an external and seeing what it means in women, right? That all our great women of Torah were able to look at the external and see the internal when the men could not. Sarah knew about her children and made a judgment about them, right? About when Yishmael had to leave, that Abraham didn't understand them. Hashem said, your wife is right. When it came to Yaakov and Esau, Rivka knew about them and Yitzhak did not. Time and again, the woman is credited with an insight that sees a certain integrity. A certain woman's problem often is that although she has that sensitivity, she allows it to be clouded by emotion. Sometimes she'll look at a person and should see the lack of integrity, and she'll allow that to dissipate. But be that as it may, there's a certain talent of being able to see an inner being, and men have less of that. And therefore, many women in the modern age will tell you they don't want to be seen as a body, they want to be seen as an integrated, full human being. So why do they present the body? Why do they walk around so provocatively dressed or hardly dressed? Okay. The reason is because they think that they can be seen that way, and that beauty can register, and that yet men will see the inner beauty too. They don't realize that we're living in a very dark phase of history, where what meets the eye externally is dominant, and it's very hard to see the inner beauty. And that's the Jewish skill of science. By the way, just to finish, do you know today in the Western world there's a naturist movement? Do you know what that is? You don't have it turned down, obviously. The naturist movement is people who are nudists. They're nudists. They say the body's beautiful, why should we cover it, right? You don't have one of these guys?
I'm sure there is one.
Yeah, really.
Naturist movement. These people, if you speak to them, they give you a very spiritual story. They don't tell you that they want to be sensual. They say we're going back to the garden. Right there, the body was naked and beautiful. There's a truth in it. I'm not suggesting this, ladies. This is not yet the time for it. But it could be that a messianic era, when man and woman again reach their perfection, it could be, right, that there was once a time when the body was so beautiful that it was what you needed to look at in order to see the Neshama. It could be that these people are feeling some premonition of a messianic age, but it's not the appropriate time, obviously, because we are in an era that is so fallen that it's so hard to see anything internal, even when the external is suppressed and shown in a refined way, that let alone when the body is presented in an immodest fashion, that is it. And therefore, this is not a sort of an ultra-religious, fanatical extremism that we're anxious about sensuality, and we're not at all. Jews are very, very balanced and healthy approach to the use of the body and its beauty. It's only that we want to present it in a way that gives a chance for a balanced approach. If any questions, yeah.
Okay, so the matriarchs, they were sneers still?
Of course.
Okay.
You know what it says? That Avraham Avinu knew she was beautiful only because when they crossed the border into Egypt, so as she crossed the stream, she needed to lift her skirt to cross the stream, and he saw her there for the first time. And then he said, I see you're incredibly beautiful, they're going to kill me. So the Medrash says he never saw that until then.
Okay.
So she was...
So they were beautiful, they were sneers, then Esther comes along.
Yeah.
So Hashem gave us that early on. So what does beauty mean now? Because Esther doesn't, or there's two
It
sides.
means the same thing, but now it's more dangerous. The story is that when man and woman were created, there was no danger at all. You could be completely naked, and anyone looking at you saw only the soul. The Yetzer Hara, that lecherous, evil aspect of mankind, was a completely powerless being external to man. It was a serpent trying to get attention on the outside. Only after man allowed it in did the problem arise. And then things become worse and worse, more and more dangerous. The body becomes to asserts itself more and more and more. And now we live in a generation where all there is the body. Right? And the soul, the real spirituality, is very hard to find now. That's the story.
So did we inherit part of the serpent's behavior?
We are him. We are him. You know what the Gemara says? The Gemara says that the Yetzer Hara, the serpent, is called Sfoni. Sfoni means the hidden one. So the Gemara says because he's hidden within you. So most people say, what do you mean? I know what the Yetzer Hara is. He's not hidden. I know exactly where he is. The first thing that speaks to me in the morning, he says to me, do you really want to get up now? You know how cold it is out there? You know how tired you are? I know exactly where my Yetzer Hara is. The sages mean that that voice doing the analysis is already him. When you know where your Yetzer Hara is and you're making judgments and stuff, well, that's him speaking.
So with Adam and Eve, the Yetzer Hara was the serpent?
Of course, but it was external to them. All they wanted was a relationship with Hashem. There was no problem, right? And therefore there was no sensual temptation or problem at all. It spoke only from the outside. The Rambam says all they could see was true and false. They couldn't see good and bad. There was no bad to them was ridiculous. All they could see was true and false. Related to Hashem was true. Anything else, any immoral act, anything outside of that was just ridiculous. It's like saying 1 and 1 is 3. After they allowed it in, now it becomes very problematic. Now every evil thing has a justification, every good thing has a price. Now the situation is complete.
So besides that, once they ate from the apple, there was a physical morphine as
It
well.
wasn't an apple.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shoot, no. That's
After they ate from the
Right.
fruit, they
Absolutely.
ingested into their being that mixed reality where the body has two facets. Do you know what the Kabbalists call the tree of knowledge? Why is it called Eitz Hadas Tov Ra? The tree of the knowledge of good and bad. Good and bad? Why is good in the tree? It should be called the tree of the knowledge of evil. You hear the problem? Why is the tree of evil called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? So in Kabbalah it's called Ilana Desvega, the tree of doubt. After you eat from that tree, good and bad become mixed and you can't tell them apart anymore. Now the good in the body and the bad are mixed. The body could be a vessel of mitzvahs, but it could be an illicit. This is the problem, right? So they ingested that confusion into themselves. That's why when Hashem appeared in the garden and man is hiding under the garden, talk about confused. He knows Hashem sees through trees, he's hiding. But what's even worse than that, Hashem comes into the garden and says, where are you? That's how you want to play the game, like I can't see. Where are you? Because he reflects the way you behave, right? And now history is a confusion. Yes,
So
and
are we any different from the Greek society then?
no, we are Greek society. Because what Greece introduced to the world, that whole aesthetic concept, all of Western culture is Greek today. All political structures, aesthetics, is philosophy, all Western thought, not the Arab world, that's a different thing. But the Western world we find ourselves is all Greek concepts. Absolutely. I'll give you an example. An example. No normal woman today would walk down the street naked. But she'll pose for a painting and put paintings on the walls. How does that happen? Again, you have a society, right, where on the one hand, and people put that in their homes and take their kids to see it. I mean, what is going on, right? That means it's acceptable to look at a work of art, which shows the naked beauty of the body. And of course there is a beauty in that. But the same person who should have walked down the street like that, she'd probably rather die. I mean, I hope she'd rather die. Do you see the conflict? And they just don't feel it. They just don't see that. Sometimes I go to a place, I have to do a show of somebody's home. Like, if I sit this side, I've got to look at it. If I sit that side, they've got to look at it. I mean, how do you... But there's a conflict here. There's a real, what do you call it? An ambivalence about this thing. And the reason is because the body is beautiful. But on the other hand, it's problematic, right? So that's Greek. That's Greek. The Greeks were all... Why were the games played naked? Because that was the point. The point was that there's athletic excellence, intellectual philosophical excellence, physical excellence, it all has to be, right? And there's a deep philosophy. The philosophy is you need a healthy content and a beautiful vessel.
So how are they different from naturalists like today?
That's the naturists are claiming that they're going back to that. And that's
Yeah.
true. And there is a deep truth in it. It was originally the natural state of the human being. But things have now, the balance has shifted and is now very, very dangerous. Yes.
So with the naturalist, I mean, that's been going around since the early on. That's just hokey. To make an excuse to
Well,
have
my opinion,
a deviant and try to make it legal. That's why we have the laws.
look, I don't know in person.
No, I understand, I was just saying.
I would I would guess that the women are probably sincere. They probably mean it. The men are probably a little confused, I would think. But listen, don't talk about it in Texas. That's the last thing you need them starting up with. It's a childlike thing. Children don't feel that. Right? Children don't feel that. It's when the body enters the state of being able to be misused, then this problem arises, right? So we're going back to a childhood event where that wasn't an issue. Right? Yes?
How do we elevate ourselves from that stage of wherever we're at naturally because of where we're holding in the world
Yeah.
to a higher level of
Well, the
utilizing
first
the
tool
world?
that we're talking about in this area is the work of what we call SNES. That's exactly what it is. And you have to teach that, right? It's the dignified, it's not teaching little girls that the body's bad or some conflicted message. The message is that we are created very beautiful, and yet there's a lot of work that needs to be done to present that in a refined way so that the balance is correctly established. That's what SNES is. And Jewish women, especially in an environment today where that's so badly misunderstood, right? You have to do that, and not in an ugly way, not in a prudish way. It has to be a very, very refined and dignified way. That's the way.
So sorry for the work that did, right?
Yeah.
So how do we understand it wasn't for physical beauty alone?
Of course it was.
It was physical beauty
But
alone.
of course it was.
So even
Shchem.
even
You know,
someone who's internally
just one second. You seem to be a little confused about this. Shchem, who abducted Dinah, was called Shchem ben Hamor. Okay? That means Shchem, the son of a donkey. In case you think he was spiritual. Okay? Hamor in Hebrew means a donkey. The same word means the material, chomer.
No, I don't think he was spiritual, but I think very brave people could be attracted to spiritual beauty. That's accompanying physical beauty, obviously,
Why would they be attracted to the spiritual?
because it's attractive.
I think you need to be spiritual to see that. If you're an animal, you see the animal.
What if the spiritual beauty was reflected in the physical?
It was.
No, that the reason for the physical beauty
Yes.
was the spiritual.
It is.
So I think what you might be trying to say is that they only saw the physical beauty, but it was because of the spirit. The source was the spiritual beauty.
There's always a truth. And every lie always has a truth. If a physical external is beautiful, it always suggests something deep and connects to that. Well, there's always that. But it's the question of balance and getting the proportions right. I see you must have a very good heart because you want to see that all those people had a spiritual vision and that they saw the inner content. And so it's a very good way of looking at things. I hate to disappoint you.
I'm just trying to figure out the solution because even
I told you the
women that
solution.
was so internal,
Here's the
that
solution.
stopped.
That
So is
when
there
you-
any hope?
The solution is clear. Origin is no conflict, and spiritual and physical beauty
At the end of the day, they got abducted.
because you're dealing with Shchem ben Hamor. There's no hope for you. If you're a donkey, if all you see in the world is the material and the physical, then all you're
But
interested
even
in.
someone of SNES could be dealing with that kind of behavior.
You don't understand me.
I do as well.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think differently.
No matter how subtle the presentation, a person's orientation is that orientation. We'll see it anyway. No question about it. And therefore, the Egyptians, no matter how modest Sarah was, they perceived the beauty. And she probably wore this kind of thing, like they did in the Arab world. I don't know, but they saw it. She glowed with that kind of beauty. And when it came to Shechem, that's what he saw. Yes.
But it calls Dina Yatzanes, so like that she went out. So is that like a precaution we should for ourselves that we
That's
shouldn't go out? Don't bring your place to certain places
That's what Chazal say, that she went out to see the girls of the land, and she got noticed. The only woman in Egypt who ended up in a relationship with an Egyptian, there was only one in 210 years of slavery. Amazing thing. The slave people, right, beaten down by powerful Egyptians. Only one woman ended up in a relationship with an Egyptian, and that was accidental because he pretended to be her husband. What was the reason? Because her name was Shlomit. What does it mean? She said shalom. She greeted people. She kind of talked a bit too much, and he noticed her. Because there was that going out of an exposure, even though it was very, very minimal and very hidden and so forth, but there's a balance in it.
So you put yourself at risk by being friendly.
Of course you do. Of course you do. There's a question of balance there. If you're over-friendly, you will attract the wrong attention. Isn't that obvious? need to be dignified and refined, and the body language and the presentation has to come across clearly. You have to hang out in the right circles and present yourself in the right fashion and realize that you're living in a depraved world that doesn't see you the way you see things necessarily. You have to have your wits about you.